Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the warm welcome. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here and being involved. It's extraordinarily important, especially in these times that we're facing, not only in my state, but across the entire country. It strikes me that the time we're in right now, we have a greater need for people to be telling each other the truth than we've had in almost any time in our country's history. And the reason for that is because the challenges that we face are big but solvable. They're solvable if we tell each other the truth. And that's what we've been trying to do in New Jersey for the last now nearly 5 years. Let me acquaint you a little bit about what's been going on in my state. When I got into office, I inherited a state that over the last 8 years had 115 tax and fee increases at the state level in 8 years. Had spending that had gone up 56%. Had a state that was lagging economically. In fact, during the entire decade before I became governor, we had 0 private sector job growth. 0 private sector job growth in a decade. It was a state that needed to be changed. And what happened when I got there? The first thing that I inherited was a $2.2 billion budget deficit that had to be fixed within 6 weeks of taking office. They told me if we didn't fix it and cut spending and pound spending in the first 6 weeks, that we wouldn't meet payroll for the second pay period in March. Now imagine being governor of a state, the second wealthiest state per capita in America, and not being able to meet payroll for the second pay period of March. So I had two choices. I could negotiate with my Democratic legislature down the hall, or, given the state of New Jersey's Constitution, I could go into a room, make the cuts that were necessary, and sign an executive order, not involving the legislature at all. For those of you who've gotten to know me even a little bit over the last 5 years, if you think I took choice 1, you need to leave the room now. We took choice number 2. And I went through the budget line item by line item and impounded $2.2 billion. And with the stroke of a pen, we were able to get our budget back in balance. But the question was, how do I announce this? I'd done it sitting in my office with my staff, with the state treasurer. So I asked for my first joint session speech before the legislature. They asked me what it was about. I said it's about the budget crisis. And they asked me beforehand for a copy of my text. And I said, no, we don't give copies of the text out before. And they go, no, Governor, you don't understand. It's tradition to give it to the legislature. And I said, yes, so you can leak it and attack it before I give it. No, I said, I'll pass up on that opportunity. I said to them, listen, this ain't Vegas and I ain't Wayne Newton. We do 1 show a night. That's it. You don't get a preview. And so I'll give you the 15-second version of the speech, which is probably the one that I should have given when I first gave it. I went into the chambers. I said, this is your problem. You created it. You dumped it on my doorstep at the beginning of this job. I just went into my office. I cut $2.2 billion in spending. I fixed your problem. You can thank me later. Have a good day. And I left. Now, you can only imagine the reaction I got from the legislature. On the floor of the legislature afterwards, they were outraged. And they called me all these names, Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, all these great leaders of the past that I admire so much. And the next day, I saw the Senate president, Steve Sweeney, who's an iron worker, in fact, president of the Iron Workers Local in New Jersey. And we were coming into the State House through the same side door. And he had said all those awful things in the newspaper to me. So I said, you know, Steve, I thought about it, and what you said really touched me. And so I'm going to vacate the executive order, and I'm going to send this problem down the hall to you guys, and then you can fix it. And this is all you need to know about New Jersey politics. He said to me, hey, Governor, don't overreact. I think you actually did a pretty good job. There's no reason to send that problem down the hall for me to fix. I tell you that story because it's about how you establish credibility in leadership by making hard decisions, by taking the burden onto yourself, and then to stand up for the things that you believe in order to allow yourself to have the credibility you need to be able to lead. And it's not just on issues like our fiscal issues, where I've vetoed 4 income tax increases, where state spending today on discretionary spending is $2.2 billion less than it was 7 years ago in New Jersey, where we've capped property taxes and capped the raises that public sector unions can get, where we reformed teacher tenure for the first time in 100 years, gotten merit pay in our worst performing school district, and increased charter schools throughout the state to record levels. Those are all things that have been done in the last 4.5 years with a Democratic legislature. What does that tell you also? That leadership is also about figuring out a way to get things done. I absolutely believe people in my state and people across the country are tired of a government that is constantly bickering with each other towards no end, getting nothing done, allowing our country to drift in stalemate, with no progress being made towards the things that we need to do to make our country a better place, to make our children's future more safe and secure. And so I wake up every morning with a Democratic legislature, everybody, and that means I wake up every morning knowing I'm not getting everything I want. But there is a comfort in knowing that you're willing to work as hard as you need to work to get the important things done, like the things I just listed. People also have to know from a principled position where you stand. Now, when I decided to run for governor in 2009 and met with supporters, potential supporters, and political consultants, they went through, that checklist of issues that everybody goes through to find out where's the candidate stand. And they asked me where I stood on the issue of life. And I said, I'm pro-life. And they said to me, there's never been a pro-life candidate elected statewide in New Jersey since Roe versus Wade, and we don't believe one can be elected. So you need to think about this issue. And I said to them, I already have. I have thought about the issue, and this is my position. And what we did in the campaign was to speak very frankly to people about the sanctity of life and how I believe that every life is a gift from God that's precious and must be protected. I told people from New Jersey that I knew many of them who would consider voting for me disagreed with me on this issue, but that they had a right to know what was in my heart. Because when you know what's in someone's heart, you have a window into how they'll lead. And I want to say one other thing about this issue before I move on to the next one. I can't tell you how many times I've had people in the media say to me, Governor, how is it that a Republican Party can be a national party that wins again when, their words, you're so intolerant on certain social issues? And this is the answer I give them and the way I lead. So, we have different definitions of intolerance. You see, remember this. Names like Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Tom Ridge, all Republicans who are pro-choice Republicans and have spoken at Republican national conventions. I said to a number of different reporters who've asked me this, name me the one pro-life Democrat who has ever been able and allowed to speak at a Democratic National Convention since Roe versus Wade. Don't strain yourself, because there's never been one. Theirs is the party that is intolerant. Theirs is the party that excludes other ideas. And we should no longer sit around and allow ourselves to be punching bags and have those phrases used about us when it is the other party that excludes differing ideas and not the Republican Party that has excluded differing ideas on this issue. I was giving a speech in New Jersey just last week about an issue that I think is directly connected, for me personally, to my stance on life. And that is what we do with the drug problem in America. Every day, we have people of every age, of every religion, of every socioeconomic class, falling victim to the disease of drug addiction. We have tried now for 40+ years a war on drugs that is broad and wide against everyone involved in drugs in America. And it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. What works is giving those people, nonviolent drug offenders, addicts, the ability to be able to get the tools they need to be able to deal with their disease. I doubt that there is any person in this room that has not had the problem of drug or alcohol addiction touch their families, their neighbors, or their friends. We have all seen it. And for those who don't agree that treatment is the way to go for people who are not violent, and let me be clear, I'm a former federal prosecutor. I put lots of people in jail over 7 years, and violent, sociopath, drug dealers deserve to go to prison. That's not the people I'm talking about. The people I'm talking about are the users who commit petty, nonviolent crimes to support their addiction. You see, I believe if you're pro-life, as I am, you need to be pro-life for the whole life. You can't just afford to be pro-life when the human being is in the womb. You have to be pro-life after they leave the womb. And sometimes being pro-life then is messy. Sometimes it's difficult because human beings make bad choices. We are flawed. And I doubt there's one of us in this audience who hasn't made a bad choice or a bad decision in your life. Fortunately, it didn't lead to a disease that can ruin your life. So when we say we're pro-life, we need to be pro-life for the entire life. We need to stand up for the hurt and the wounded. There needs to be a culture of life that Pope John Paul II spoke about. From the womb until natural death, we need to be there for those, even for those who stumble and fall, to be there to lift them up. To me, that's the true meaning, the complete meaning of being pro-life. And we need to be pro-life because we know that education is the way to have people reach their greatest and fullest God-given potential. And the education system in this country and the way it's operating now is not working. That's right. And it's not working most particularly for our least fortunate. In our cities across this country, we have children every day falling further and further behind because we have an educational system that cares more about the comfort of adults than they care about the potential of children. And we need to be fighting that fight as well, as a derivative of us believing that life is precious. And so whether you're a child who sits in a classroom in Newark, New Jersey, or in my hometown suburb of Mendham, you deserve a great education. We need to have more charter schools. We need to have vouchers so that families, regardless of their status, can make a choice for their child. We need to hold teachers to the highest standards and reward the great ones and fire the bad ones. We need to make our first priority the God-given potential of each and every one of those children sitting in that classroom. And in America, we're not doing that today, and that's why we're falling further and further behind, because our leaders are in the throes of the influence of the special education interests in this country, who are well-funded and aggressive at protecting their turf. See, but their turf is not just their turf, it's our turf too. It's the turf that our children learn and grow and develop in. And we need to do much better than what we're doing. And that's why we've done the things we've done in my state, and I want to do more. And our country needs to do more. Because every child has the right to reach his or her full potential. And it's our obligation as leaders in this society to speak out for them and do what we need to do for them. Leadership is also about making sure that our friends know who our friends are and that our adversaries know who they are as well. And we are seeing now all across this world that this administration's pulling back of American influence and American ideas around the world is having catastrophic effects in every corner of the globe. That's not anything more than the failure of the American leader to speak clearly, profoundly, and inspirationally about what America's role is. Whether it's drawing a red line in Syria and then not enforcing it, hurting America's credibility and allowing the Russian leader to fill the vacuum of leadership in a way that will not be good for the world, and then watching how that movement moves from Syria, our lack of engagement, to now causing the issues they're causing in Iraq, whether it's the nuclear program in Iran or in North Korea. All of these things are happening, in my opinion, because of a lack of clarity and principle in American leadership in the statement of who we are. And worst of all, you have sitting in the midst of this the beacon of hope and democracy and respect for human rights in that section of the world, the state of Israel, who now feels at risk because they are no longer convinced that America is their unwavering friend because of the actions of this administration. That's wrong. Israel is our friend. We need to stand up for it and fight for it. That's what I mean by our friends not fully knowing any longer who our friends are, and our adversaries not knowing who they are either. You know, I'm accused of lots of different things, and I'm called lots of different names. But indirect has never been one of them. The fact is that leadership is about telling people who you are and what you stand for, and then speaking it directly, loudly, and understandably, so that not only your supporters know who you are, but the people who are against you know who you are too, and have respect for where you stand and who you are, and that where you stand is where you're willing to fight. And that's what we need to do more of in this country. And ironically, everybody, that's what creates the opportunity for principled compromise. You do not enter a principled compromise with someone who you don't believe has principles. You don't compromise with someone that you don't fear. Because if you have nothing to fear, you think you're going to get exactly what you want. Now, the fact is that this is all about getting us to a point where our government works once again. That it works for the people who pay the bills. That it works for the people who raise our families. That it works for the people who run our volunteer organizations and our charitable organizations. That in New Jersey, when I say we want drug rehabilitation for everyone who needs it, that means from everyone who provides it. The government, private organizations, faith-based organizations, all of whom have a role to play in trying to make our government and our society work again. None of these things are easy, but they're all completely within our grasp if we're willing to stand up and fight and lead again. I know, living in the state I live in, that if it's possible there, for goodness sakes, it's possible anywhere. It's possible anywhere if it's possible in New Jersey. And it's not easy to do in a state like mine, but we're doing it. We're doing it. We're fighting every day to make it happen. I want to end with this. We wouldn't be here today but for the leaders who helped to build this country. The everyday people and those who put themselves up for leadership before. And I want us to think about what our responsibility is as we move forward to be a part of this change. I know I'm preaching to the choir today because if you are here, you are involved, you care, and you want to be a part of the difference. But I want to remind you about what one of our founding fathers said near the end of his life. John Adams, our second president, one of the authors of the Declaration of Independence, said this near the end of his life, concerned about the country he had helped found near its 50th anniversary. John Adams said, "I hope you understand all that we have sacrificed in order to secure for you your liberty. I pray you will make a good use of it. For if you do not, I shall repent in heaven for having made the sacrifice at all." The sacrifices made by folks like Washington and Adams and Jefferson and Hamilton pale in comparison to what I'm asking you to be involved in today. We do not want to be the first generation who breaks that most solemn of American commitments, and that is to leave this place better for the next generation than it was left for us. Let us not be part of the generation that makes Adams repent in heaven for having made the sacrifice at all. If that's a fight you're willing to engage in, it's a fight I'm willing to engage in. I will be with you. Thank you for having me today. Thank you for what you do.